guys, this video is going to be about the deadlift and the exercises that I particularly think should be staples in everybody's general routine as far as improving your deadlift. I guess this is dependent on your goals too, but right now these are my current favorites. And these are more so listed around specificity purposes. So some of the stuff, well, I think there are some other exercises that might be beneficial. They're probably going to be in another video as far as maybe just things to develop like hamstring and glute strength, stuff like that. So the first one I want to start off with is stiff-legged deadlifts. These are performed basically just by keeping your knees slightly bent and really kind of pushing your hip hinge back. So really that's going to be the only spot where you're really bending that. And it's just to keep tension on the hamstring and glute. I like to do these with a little bit more of a controlled descent, kind of shifting the weight back onto my heels a little bit. It helps me feel a little bit better contraction in the hamstrings. The next one is going to be a deficit deadlift. Sometimes I just like warming up with them, just getting ready for like an actual deadlift session. But to me, the big benefit, at least for me, I've noticed it helps me develop a little bit more explosiveness off the floor, which I know a lot of people might have some issues with. The other thing is it helps develop a little bit more tightness off the floor, which if you have some issues with your setup, could be very beneficial. On top of that, you could also add the first two exercises together, so deficit stiff leg deadlifts, just to add a little bit more range of motion. You get a little bit more of a stretch in your hamstring too, which when you think about it, could be pretty beneficial just in case for some reason your hip shot up and you got pulled out of position or something like that. It's nice to be able to know that you can compensate for those two sort of lifts. I do, however, recommend probably not going over like a 3-inch deficit during a deficit deadlift or something like that, because then it really isn't, it doesn't turn as much into a deadlift as much as pretty much a whole nother movement entirely. You want there to be enough similarity to the main lift itself to be able to have some more carryover. I guess the next one is just deadlifts themselves. And this just goes without saying. I mean, you're not going to get better at a lift if you're not practicing it. And sometimes what some people think might be a particular weakness in their deadlift in general might just be the fact that they're not adding adequate intensity or adequate volume in order to drive growth or drive increases in strength. So just being able to take some of those factors into account and consistently be doing those exercises might be pretty helpful to you. One thing, however, that I'm not including in this video because I didn't end up filming it, but I think could be beneficial is block pulls in particular, either at your sticking point of your deadlift, maybe at or a little bit below the knee, is going to be beneficial. I don't recommend doing things like rack pulls above the knee. While some people might think it might help with your deadlift, because you're starting with it in that position, it turns the movement into something a little bit different. So you actually might be starting off in a spot during that rack pull above the knee just that you wouldn't normally be in if you were in that same position doing a deadlift. For instance, you could be leaning back. You could be starting in a hitch position, and that really is not going to benefit you at all. Granted, it might be great for trap development, but it's not going to be terribly good for your overall deadlift. I'm going to be including some other videos in the future similar to this based on if my preferences end up changing, and give you guys a little bit of insight on that, as well as some things that I think could be beneficial to things like your deadlift, but don't necessarily have a lot of specific terms. So things like 45-degree back raises, how to do those, and some other glute hamstring type exercises, posterior chain side exercises. And this is a little bit different. I mentioned this a few videos ago, actually a few weeks ago, that I think is very beneficial now is front squats. Just as far as positioning goes, just being able to build that mid back and be able to maintain a neutral spine under the load of a deadlift. So just from a positioning standpoint, being able to load some of that tension on your mid back as well as your glutes and hamstrings, I think is gonna be very beneficial to most people. But in the meantime, that's all I got for today. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. I'll be coming out with more stuff like this in the future. Until next time, see you guys later.